Okay, so just thinking about future mobility and infrastructure and what we need to do, what I wanted to just have 4 minutes on, which is quite a challenge, is around what are the trends and how are our behaviours and users changing in terms of the way we use the network. How are the technology transitions going to impact? And of course, economics and government policy and environmental pressures. So all these things will play a part in the future of mobility. So, heads up, where are we now? We've got 80% of passenger kilometres travelled by road. So overarching dominance of road is massive. And it's 10 times in terms of passenger numbers what the rail network actually carries. And I think we sometimes lose that. But how we're using the network actually changes. So there's more light goods, there's more older people, there's actually fewer younger people using the network. There's less folk taking the driving tests, buying cars at a younger age. What we're buying is changing. So the diesel technologies are on the way out, electric vehicles are on the way up. So just playing that through in terms of sort of the key technologies. So if you think about autonomous vehicles, at the moment, the whole CAV revolution is being very much forced from the manufacturer's perspective. And if the predictions are to be believed, then the whole CAV revolution starts to get going between 2020 2030. That's when the sort of autonomous levels really start to pick up, or the best guesses. But there's a couple of key questions. It's being forced by the manufacturers. Do the people, do the public, do the drivers actually want it? So there's an unanswered question there. And secondly, how will our transport authorities start using it? Because they could go down a rather controlling route, where actually if you drive into a city authority, they take control of the vehicle to get the better congestion, get the better flow, reduce congestion, I should say, and get the safety benefits. Will that actually come to pass? If you think about coming back to the point about actual road usage and traffic growth, we've got a couple of conflicting things. We've got the whole mobility as a service and the autonomous vehicles and that mixed sort of mobility model predicting, some studies suggest that the cost of travel could be reduced to 10, 20, 30% of where we are now. So that could drive higher road usage without a doubt. On the flip side, the whole economic picture, actually for the developing world full stop, is pretty gloomy through to 2050, so the economists tell us. So, we've got a growth rate of around about 2%, which it's a guess, but just to put it into context, that's where we've been since 2010. It's just bubbling along. And the other more important economic measure is probably productivity or GVA. And actually in this country, we've got a real problem with productivity. Got high employment, so everybody turns up to work, but we just don't do that much when we get there. So, final point around emissions and climate change. The whole carbon agenda, to my mind, seems to have been raised again in the last 6 months. Transport accounts for around about 25% of the UK carbon emissions, and road transport is responsible for about 2/3 of those emissions. Interesting things are happening in terms of how the EV network and the whole battery system and the whole power network is starting to combine. I read last week that there was a £20 million investment on the M6 near Carlisle about a huge battery sort of capacitor store which would provide high charge points for rapid charge for vehicles. But not only that, it would provide a resilience measure to feed back into the grid. So is the future lots and lots of batteries all over the network? Is that where we're heading? Okay, thank you.